Again at Nomadpdu, today I want to talk in depth about the V5.5 100 amp hour Life PA4 prismatic, and I want to talk in detail about how you use them in the four-wheel drive, not only four-wheel drive but the off-grid, and also the prospecting industry. So a lot of prospectors away 3 or 4 weeks, and also people out there doing backburning or other jobs for the government where they're away for long periods of time, and they quite typically might have 3 or 4 or 5 battery banks in their vehicles. Might be their trailer, their caravan, then they might detach their caravan and have the vehicle, and they need to have a power source in there. So one of the things you've got to remember is that we're talking about weight and size. So what we've done is we try to pack everything we could into the V5.5 and make it affordable. Like previously, for a dual battery setup, a proper dual battery, you wouldn't get much change out of $3 grand, and that's to have it completely installed. So today you're really going to talk about these units here, which are really flexible plug and play. You typically can pick one of these up and you can have a full dual setup within a couple of hours, if not immediately, by using a plug and play Sega DC, and we'll go into that shortly. But I just wanted to touch on the features, because with 100 amp constant output, these units have dual Anderson outputs, which are 50 amp rated each. And always remember that, because at the moment what I've got here, just to show you, if you're out away for 3 or 4 weeks, it's typical to have maybe 2 or 3 fridges running, and that's okay. This unit here could quite happily run 4 or 5. Because it has dual Anderson outputs, over here as you can see, I can run both of those at the same time. And what I've got here is I've got 2 52-litre fridges running at the same time out of the one Anderson. Now the Anderson, the 50 amp output, but I know that at the moment this is drawing about 12 amp flat out. So that's just been turned on, and I'm running it at -2. So that's drawing 12 amp at the moment, and in about 45 minutes it'll cut back down, the thermostat will cut in, and then the compressor will stop. So you could run that, and you could have another wire lead running out of this as well. But please remember, if you've got 50 here and 50 here, it doesn't mean you can run 100 because you've got 50 this end, and it has been done before, even though the unit's protected. So you've got dual Anderson outputs, and what we do suggest is if you've got fridges, take the cigarette plugs off, or the angles or whatever, and put Anderson plugs on, because that's pretty much the mainstay today if you're out and about. Also if you've got a little camp oven. So things like, if you're going to run a cryovac, if you're going to be running any of your sort of 18 volt battery packs and things like that, you can run an inverter off this. The highest you'd run off this is 600 watt inverter, because it's a 50 amp. On our V6, which you would see, and you have a look at other tutorials after this, is that can run 100 amp constant, and that can have up to 1500 watt inverter, and you can use about 1344 watt. So these units here are 1280 watts or 100 amp hour, which you can have at constant. 2 Sega socket outputs, they're 10 amp rated each, and then you've got a dual fast USB-C. And one of the things I want to talk about when you talk about battery packs and charging and inverters, a lot of the products you've got, like this up here, I've got a little Azito, that's actually run off a USB and charges, it works perfectly, and I don't have to pull out my Ryobi or my Milwaukee's. So if I wanted to charge my Milwaukee's or the DeWalt's and I want a fast charger, you look at the wattage that it's drawing, and typically they might draw 300 or 400 watt, and then you can plug it into a 600 watt inverter and charge all those types of things there. When we talk about CPAP machines, because of this high voltage, it's 14.6 volt. That is the system, and normal voltage is 12.8. So it's 14.6 volt. Life PA4 is the voltage that these run at, and if you've got to have a regulated solar panel, that's what you want the reg to be set at. So again, when we're talking about, that's the outputs, 100 amp constant output at any given time. So you can have a couple of these running, you can have it all running at the same time, no problem at all. So what we've got here is an LED screen, or an LCD setting, sorry. And I've got it sitting on constant at the moment, but I can actually turn it off by holding the button down for 7 seconds, and that will disappear. The great thing about these is it's Bluetooth, and you don't have to have a separate monitor set in the front of the vehicle. We'd have to have it wired up and pay another couple of grand for the wiring and the labour to do it. So these typically, now they'll run directly off a smartphone, and as you can see here, all the smarts, hopefully you can see it there, all the smarts will come up on here, and that's got a dial that's telling me it's 97%, and it's telling me that it's 6.7 amp is coming out of it, and then it'll tell me everything about the series, and it'll tell me the cell temperatures and all that. And that's basically on the smartphone that you've got there, as you can see probably now. So you've got that, so you can be within distance 10 meters, and you can get that diagnostic of that without having to have anything hardwired. Or you can leave the LED screen on or turn the LED screen off. If you've got that back in the vehicle, you're going to have that screen turned off, and then just simply look at your phone when you get your phone set up there, and away you go. So how do you charge these things? Now you've got a range of chargers. It does come with a 10 amp AC DC charger, which is like so. and then so it'll come in a box like this. So this actually comes with the unit, and that's a 10 amp charger. It takes a maximum of 50 amp regulated charge. And if you want to run a bigger DC, so if you've got a proper dual setup or dual DC, you can run something like this, which is a Matson. That's a 20 amp DC with solar input. Plug your solar into that, plug the other end into the car, and then it'll charge that when the car's running, and when the car stops, the solar panel will charge. So that's a DC setup there, and it's pretty much plug and play. I could set that up in anyone's vehicle in probably a half an hour by putting a connection to the crank battery, and then an Anderson with a fuse or a resettable fuse, and connect it to the wire that goes to the Matson there. Now, the other way you can charge this by solar, and I've got a solar panel over here which is unregulated. An unregulated solar panel, so you don't have to spend a whole heap of dollars on a solar panel. In fact, you don't need. They're going to get dirty, dusty, and all the rest of it when you're out and about, get damaged, cracked, and scratched, and that does make a difference to efficiency. You may throw them away every year because of the damage that's done. That's connected directly without a controller. It's connected directly to the red input. The red is the standard Anderson for unregulated solar panels. So if it's got a red, Anderson on the panel, it's typically going to be unregulated, but do check that it is unregulated. So it'll go straight, the cables go straight to the back to the little black, non-technical looking connection to the panel. That's unregulated. Maximum I would suggest is 300 watt to this, and a 300 watt solar panel is probably going to put in, you might get 14, 15 amp out of it, sunshine hours a day. So if you're running 14 or 15 amp in the solar panel throughout the day, you're quite happy to run a couple of fridges like this, and during the night you might lose 30%, 20% of the battery, but then when it comes up in the morning, it's going to be fully charged at night. And that's the thing you've got to really touch on, is if you've got 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 batteries and you've got them all connected up, so you've got 1,000 amp of power, what is it you're charging it with? Because if you're trying to charge that 1,000 amp of battery overnight, or in one day, how are you actually charging unless you've got a bank of solar panels? It's all about putting back what you take out. So it's whatever you're taxing the batteries, can you put it back in each day? Me personally, I know that this setup here, which is I use this here with two that run completely all day, every day. And I know that if I use 260 watt panel, and I'm letting them running flat out every day, and I've got them at say -2, I know that they'll never run out, and I know every night that they'll be fully charged. And in the morning, like I said, probably lose 30 or 40%, maybe, depends on how hard I run them and how many beers you've taken out. And that will run perfectly fine. So you don't need to have 200 kilograms of battery, have to upgrade your springs, and then you have something you cannot move away from the vehicle. So the great thing about this is that they do have installation brackets that come with it, and once you put this in place in the vehicle, all you do is like use a little Zito there, just take the screws out the sides and leave the brackets there, and now it's portable. Just take it out. 2 minutes install, 2 minutes to take it out and move it around. If you have to move campsite, you're not stuck to the vehicle. You can have a full campsite running, which we did for a charity just not so long ago, and we had our Nomad running multiple fridges at the campsite and everyone's lighting. So at the moment I've got an LED light running off it, so you could run plenty of LED lights off the 10 amp cigarette output, or if you wanted to, you could have another wire in here and adapt it to an Anderson to running off your LED lights if that's what you wanted to do. So things like your cryovacs, the CPAP machines, all those types of things you're typically going to use when you're out for driving for extended periods of time. Water pumps, no problems at all. Typical 12 volt water pumps, no problems at all. And the other thing you need to look at, you can talk further to us directly, or is that you can have a look on our tutorials and we talk further about the inverters, and also step up and step down. So you can buy what's called a Sigga DC. This is one I just pulled out just a moment ago. And basically what it's got here, it's a DC-DC charger. You may have seen these before, and it simply takes a voltage of input. This one takes 9 to 36 volt in. Okay, so that plugs into your Sigga socket of your vehicle, and the other end comes out 14.65 amp constant. So basically I plug that into the vehicle, and then I plug that into my regulator input. Now that will charge at 5 amp from the vehicle when the car's running. So from when the Sigga socket is on, which is when your car's running, just make sure it is only on when the car's on and running. Some Sigga sockets will be on when the car's off, but it's not that typical these days. Plug in the Sigga socket, plug it in there, grab and go, you've got 5 amp charge. So if you're running 40 litre Engel, for example, that'll be heaps. If you're driving 3 or 4 hours, it's going to put back in whatever that's been taken out overnight, and that's what you've just got to remember. So these are called step up, step downs, or DC-DC voltage stabilizers. And the other thing about this that you can use, if you have an older V5 or if you had one of these, you can plug it into the sticker socket output here, the 5 amp one. You could actually connect that to a fridge, and then all the fridges you're going to see is say 14.6 volt, regardless of what voltage is in the unit. But you've got to remember with LivePA4 prismatic, these are all A grade. What happens with these, they run through the whole cycle at the high voltage. So they run point at 12.8 or higher, around 13.3 after you take the charger off. And then they'll run right through the cycle at 12.8 until the actual unit's dead. So these guys here, you can run them 100% dead and it's not a problem. One thing I will say though is because if you run a lithium battery completely dead, you may have to use the AC/DC charger just to get it started, and so the solar panel will pick it up or the MPPT will pick it up. So this has an MPPT inside, it's 20 amp rated. So this has a 20 amp MPPT, the previous model V5 had a 10 amp. So that has a 20 amp MPPT controller in it. So between these two you can run 50 amp maximum charge at any given time. So you can use one of these here and run one of the larger DC-DCs. You might be using a Red Up or Energize or one of the bigger name brands. This one here comes in 20 and 40 amp. The 40 amp one of this, you could plug it in there and you still could put in say another 150 watt panel and if you wanted to. And unregulated. The great thing about that is you don't have to pay for regulators and things when this already has a good regulator inside. So you can connect that to a nice 40 amp one like this. And the thing is, for under $1,400, you could have a 20 amp full DC-DC with solar input, a 10 amp AC/DC charger, the full kit, also capacity to handle unregulated panel, and you don't have to spend probably 100. It's basically if you spend $1 a watt, that's really what you can look at in a solar panel, and that's enough. You can get obviously better panels, etc., but you know they're going to get damaged, then you may not want to spend that amount of money. So that's the V5.5. It weighs about 14 kilograms, and its dimensions are 325 by 110 thick by 320 high. So it's still very, very manageable and easy to move around. And you'll see on the front here, it will say 14.6 down to 10 volt. When it dies, it'll be 10 volt. It'll go from 12.8 and then basically it's just going to be right at the end at 98% or whatever, and then it's going to drop down to 10 and then it'll just basically go black. That's not a problem. Just plug it in and restart it. Switch on and off here, and then the LED screen separate here. LED screen, hold down for 6 or 7 seconds, and a little standby light goes off. And when it goes off, the LED screen will go off in about probably 45-50 seconds. So a lot of people press it accidentally and hold it down, keep pressing it, and then the LCD doesn't go off. They think the thing's broken or whatever, but that's all it is, just a setting on there. The other thing about fridges as well is if you're going to be going out camping and you're going to go out do a full, couple of weeks or a month, etc., and you're buying a full setup, always test it out first. Like this setup I've got here now, I would put it all out there and run the fridges and everything isn't going to run it and let it run for a week, 2 weeks before I go out to make sure the fridges are holding temperature and make sure there's no issues with connections or anything like that. And the other thing I'm talking about inverters, with these guys here, a 600 watt inverter, pure sine, if you can get it, is what you want to be looking for, and they're easy enough, and because it's a 600 watt inverter, you can quite happily connect that with the cabling into the 50. When you go to the bigger inverters, that's where the V6 comes in, and it's a slimmer design. It's a little bit heavier. The configuration is different. You can have a look on our site at the V6, but that can take a 1500 watt inverter. So you need a 10mm cable to run it properly. A lot of people, again, it's all about cabling. Make sure the cable is correct, and also make sure the cable lengths are shorter. So if I was running that solar panel to this, I would keep it as short as I can. So I've made an adapter up which has gone from the grey to the red, but I know that's an unregulated panel. So just be careful if you're cutting cables off the back of solar panels. Is it regulated or is it unregulated? Because that makes a difference to where you can plug things in, and a lot of people plug a regulator into a regulator and have problems. And that's typically what happens. I've seen it a million times, when even with our units, when I've had to work it out remotely over the phone what sort of panel it is and go through the whole configuration and find out there's a regulator going to a regulator, and it doesn't work, or what it does, it creates a confusion between the units because they're all technical. So we talk about these for long periods of outdoor activity. So if you're out prospecting, if you're out doing long adventures away, if you're up the Nullarbor, etc., and you're away from any sort of power source, make sure you've got enough solar capacity to put in the tacks that you're taking out from all of your fridges and some of your heavy drawings things. So a lot of the smaller ovens now, you get some good ovens from some of the big brand 4-wheel drive guys, and they're 1224s, quite happy to run them out of the Anderson. They work fine. And if you want to use induction ovens, and if you want to use kettles and things like that, and you really do want to use them, have a look at how much watt they draw and what size inverter you need, and use the correct size inverter, and don't run the inverter flat out. And if it's going to draw 700 or 800 watt as a kettle, you can't plug it into even an inverter into this, because if it's a 600 watt inverter, you plug it in, it's not going to work. So look at the size, or always look at accessories. But there's enough 12 volt stuff around that it's really powerful. There's no really requirement to have, you know, the big 240 sort of stuff there. The other problem with having an inverter is as soon as someone sees a 240 connection, someone turns up and plugs in their plasma gun or something to it and fries the inverter. I've seen it happen a few times. So that's the version 5.5, suitable for, like I said, the small, your off-grid, your tiny home, you know, full four-wheel drive, heavy-duty stuff. If you want to get rid of some of the heavier stuff in your vehicle, and that's what you've got to remember, is it may be the difference between having to upgrade springs and all that type of stuff there. So this really fit for purpose. Market prospecting is and also charging your batteries for your metal detectors, and most of your 12 volt accessories and things like that. These are absolutely perfect, and they don't take up much space. It leaves you more room for buying other accessories for whatever the main reason for your business is out in the bush. So contact at nomadpdu.com.au, and any questions, send through us an email. These are available in store now, so if you get a chance, have a look online. You'll see our suppliers. Get in contact with them, or at contact@nomadpdu.com.au, and